time, we cut out the cancer.
What's up, you guys? Rick Montalban here, Horror Fiend TV, three corners of horror. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to Horror Fiend TV. Greatly appreciate that you do. And today we're going to have a really good discussion. But first, introductions, of course, joining me again, the man on top, JR. What's good, son?
Not much, man. Ready to talk about these two.
That's right. What's up, Joe? Talk to me.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us again, and please continue to do so. So we're looking forward to talking about Malignant tonight.
All right, cool. Well, today we're going to discuss James Wan's latest film, Malignant, a film so bonkers, I'm sure it's going to be extremely polarizing amongst the fan base. The film stars Annabelle Wallis as Madison Mitchell and Maddie Hassan as Sydney Lake. In the movie, Madison finds herself plagued by these horrific visions of murder, mayhem, only to discover the grisly murder was in fact more of a reality. And with that, you can find this movie streaming on HBO Max, and if you want to head out to the theater, it's also playing in the cinemas as well. So the film opens up and what seems to be a flashback at the Simeon Research Hospital, and we are introduced with Dr. Florence Weaver when her entire team is killed by the film's villain, who we don't know quite anything about quite yet. There was a lot to unpack here, so I'm gonna go with JR. These opening minutes, what you take out of it?
The opening minutes were actually very. They did serve their purpose, because immediately you get the look of the Simeon Research Hospital right at the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. And then you get Dr. Weaver talking about this character, Gabriel, how Gabriel is getting stronger, that he's becoming more malicious, that they're not able to contain him any longer. And then you get, certain like the glimpses of them walking into the room after the whole chaos, where you have all these like dead staff members, they're trying to restrain Gabriel. You get a semi-quick glimpse of something that, you're not sure what it is. And it cuts into Gabriel talking over a radio. And, the first thing Dr. Weaver's reaction is, it's time to cut out the cancer.
Well, and when you first get shown Madison, one of the first things I noticed as she's pulling into her house is, the house itself is a little bit on the creepy side. She goes in and it's very dark and dreary kind of, and then she goes to talk to her husband, who's not at all happy to see her when she comes in the house. At this time she's pregnant, and, you can see that Maddie's a sad person living in an abusive relationship. And like right off the bat, you get to see that when Derek basically smashes her head into the wall, So for me, like Maddie, right off the bat, you already know that there's a darkness over her. And that was good, just showing you that this character, she has something dark that we're going to get to see coming out later. So I like that introduction of the character Maddie, and how in the beginning, especially Gabriel coming out, it was a good intro to the movie and the characters.
Yeah, I agree. Going in knowing this is a James Wan film and the kind of stuff he's made, he's got a pretty broad resume right now, going from Saw and The Conjuring, and even Aquaman for DC. And going into this film, I knew nothing of it. I didn't see no trailers. I don't watch trailers anymore for films. And as a group, we brought this up to review this particular film. And when I went into this in the opening scenes, I was not that I was confused, but I was a little bit left like, all right, there's a lot of questions that are bringing up pretty quick, and we're gonna have to see how well they put it all together. So I found it at the beginning quite interesting. We weren't really introduced to too many of the characters; just they kind of kept it small, so we don't get lost in the shuffle there. But right now, what I want to talk about is we introduced Maddie, and then she also has a sister, Sydney. Now, JR, these two characters, how did you see them in the film, and like what kind of what did they do for you as far as being characters within this horror film?
I like the master character because, like Joe was saying earlier, you felt there was something dark about her. There was something that she once again felt isolated, was always withdrawn, when she comes home from the hospital, her and Sydney are talking there on the bed, and she mentions how she wanted to have this baby because she had this need to feel a blood bond with somebody, and she reveals to Sydney that we're not really blood, we're like I was adopted. But as far as the Sydney character, I gotta be honest, she felt a little flat to me. She felt like almost like a secondary to third character. Like she was just there for certain moments to fill a certain void. Whereas the Madison character kind of like it was tough at the beginning, because for me it was tough to build on these two characters, even though you knew this darkness that was going on with Madison. But as far as Sydney, you're like, I didn't really feel any connection to Sydney and any purpose for Sydney at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. She's a tool used to, further the story along, because this film is about Madison. But Sydney will play a role, as we'll get into later. Joe, how about you? Like, what do these two characters mean to you, and how did it impact the film?
Actually, I didn't get that. If anything, when Sydney crawled into bed with Madison when she was in the hospital, you got the impression that they were close. I mean, no sibling. If you're not close, you're not going to get in bed and cuddle your sibling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when she said that after she got with Derek basically kept them apart. Another, when it comes to abusive relationships, the abuser makes you pulled away from your family because they don't want family influence in there. And as the movie went on, she was actually very involved in trying to figure things out. I mean, she went to the institute to find information on her. So I actually feel that she did love her sister, and it was just because, again, you can only get so much in the movie. Obviously, they were kept apart because of Derek. You can only get that if you're listening, what they're saying. But yeah, I don't think she was so much secondary. I mean, she was kind of a little bit, especially towards the end, a little bit pivotal, on helping Maddie out, at least for me.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay her. She did play her purpose, but I think what JR was trying to get at, she could have been fleshed out a little bit more to have us care about the character. But you brought up Derek. It's Madison's abusive boyfriend. Total douche chills from the very second he's on screen. And he's very important to the plot, though, because as you see, there's a very important part of the film where he kind of grabs Madison, shoves her head hits the back of a wall, and then causing her to bleed from the back of her skull, which just kind of sets off the film in motion, which introduces us to the character of Gabriel, who is almost kind of brought into this film as like an imaginary friend. And as the film, goes along, we see that he's more than just an imaginary friend. We don't know if he's a figment of her imagination. Is he real? We're not quite sure about that. JR, Gabriel, the character, as of this point of the film, from what we know of, like, what's your initial thoughts on him?
Well, I think when the incident happened with Derek, where he pushed her into the wall, causing her to bleed, obviously it caused the trigger to bring forth the Gabriel character. And the first glimpse you get of the Gabriel character was its reaction to what it did to Madison. Now, at first, I felt like, all right, so what he did to Derek was protecting her. But that's your initial feel to the Gabriel character, that he was brought out as her protector. But later on, you find out that Gabriel has more intentions of revenge, and he's using her vision to capture every act he committed. So the character was very interesting because of that. It went from protector to, no, this is a malevolent character, very malicious, brought up again a couple of times, seen as the devil through her eyes once it finally goes into further story. But it was an interesting character, and as the movie progresses and the plot starts to build up, you get the Gabriel you expected to get, which is this guy right here. But I like the Gabriel character.
Joe?
All right. Well, Gabriel, I did also like the character also. When they first show him, it kind of looked cool, but then after a little while, it was a little bit on a too exaggerated side. I did read that they hired a contortionist to play it, which was the cool part especially when you saw Gabriel walking backwards. So, you saw the work that was going into the person that was hired to physically play. My parts with Gabriel, however, when you get some of the action parts, then you get the CGI Gabriel. It kind of took me out of the film a little bit. Like I appreciate more physical. The physical parts were awesome, but when you're now going to the CGI part, it just took me a little way out. We'll discuss that a little later on, but that was my overall with Gabriel. I liked the character and the scenes where you saw the person playing him. There was a sense of like fear, but then when it was the CGI, you didn't get that anymore.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because when I first saw Gabriel performing all the crazy parkour and the superhuman ability, this is when I kind of said to myself, and this again, not knowing anything about the film has its advantages and also disadvantages. But one advantage was when I saw that, and I'm saying, okay, I know what this film is. You don't take it serious. This is a campy B movie with a big budget, who is trusted to an established director already. One thing I do appreciate is they gave James Wan the freedom to do whatever the hell he wanted. Because as we'll go on later, this was insane. The CGI, I agree, it does there is a disconnect. It kind of takes you out of it. But I did appreciate what they were doing, because you won't expect that. You would think, with the way this movie was marketed, I think it was a mistake. They marketed it as another Conjuring or Insidious or one of these paranormal type films because it's James Wan, his name's attached to it. They didn't know how to market this film as is. So I don't know if that was their intention to keep it as a twist, or they were afraid that it's going to turn people away. That's why I mentioned it was polarizing, because I know everyone's not going to be into it. I appreciated the campiness of it, but I do agree where if someone doesn't like you mentioned, the CGI or is a little too over the top, it's debatable. It's, everyone's welcome to their own opinions on that. I happen to love it. If someone doesn't, I'm not going to frown upon them. I understand it's not for everybody, but I appreciate the filmmakers going a step above to give you something different, something with balls, even if it was a little cheesy at points. This movie was insane. This is pretty much a basket case with a big budget, and throwing a little Hong Kong action in there is like, I don't get that all the time. And I appreciate the filmmakers for at least attempting to give us something a little different. And now that we're talking about Gabriel and his antics, now, as we go along in the film, we're seeing, Madison's having all these dreams and a lot of like Silent Hill type moments where everything around her decays. And that's when she goes into her like little nightmare state. I'm not a fan of that stuff. I never liked it, things like that. But after the film was finished, I went back and thought about it. I understood why they did it. Now, everything that Madison was seeing, she thought, it was in her head, which in fact it wasn't. It was Gabriel manipulating her, doing all this crazy shit, killing a lot of people, taking over Madison, taking over her body in general. So it was revealed, of course, that Gabriel is not her imagination. It's not an imaginary friend. It's a parasitic twin. Now, I'm going to go, Joe, go to you first on this. If you want to call it a twist, when that revelation was brought upon you, what was your first impression?
Well, up until this point, I actually thought I was watching more of The Eyes of Laura Mars, where I don't know if you haven't seen that movie, it was written by John Carpenter, but the person was seeing the visions that the killer was doing. So that's what I thought at first, was I'm like Eyes of Laura Mars, like, okay. But then when you get the reveal of the parasitic twin, as you had mentioned earlier, we went straight to Basket Case. And again, if you have not watched Basket Case, these two movies are pretty close when in the stuff that we're going to be discussing. So I thought at this point we were dealing with Maddie. Well, like I said, it was Laura Mars, and now we went to Basket Case. So you had Maddie, who is seeing what her twin that got removed. because when they said we're going to pull cut the cancer out, then okay, so they've removed the twin, and now the twin's on his own doing all this, and she's able to see it, which doesn't actually turn out to be the case. But I actually, the twin thing, I thought that was kind of cool. When they showed it, it was creepy looking as hell. But like I said, I for me, the movie kind of like James Wan gave like a kudos to the Eyes of Laura Mars and Basket Case in this movie. That's kind of what I took. Like he gave, those are old movies, and he kind of gave a little refresher on them, combining them both.
Yeah, talk to me.
Yeah, for me, the way they revealed it was perfect because you had the sister with the adopted mother watching the videos that they got from the sister broke in to get from the facility, and they're watching how they're talking to Emily, which was revealed Mass's real name was Emily May. And as they're talking to her, Dr. Weaver goes, "All right, I'm gonna wake him up." And then the minute that she walked around the table and put an injection to the back of her head, and then you see the hands come out, you're like, what the? But at the same time they're discussing this, she's sitting in a jail cell after getting assaulted, literally Gabriel coming out at the same time. So you had these back and forths of how she was as a child with Gabriel attached to her back with hands and everything, which is freaky.
Yeah.
And then her in the jail cell, her body contorting to fulfill how Gabriel changes her body. At first, as I'm watching it, I kind of knew that it was more of a connection because I started thinking the mental psychosis that they mentioned earlier in the movie. I was like, man, she was there the whole time all these things happened. So for me, I was already kind of connecting them. I did not see the fact that the thing was attached to her, even though when Derek hit the back of her head against the wall, that is the moment that Gabriel reawakened. Mm-hmm. So
cracking
it's like
her skull, he opened up the gates.
He opened up, and then when they showed the surgery, how they're like, "Oh, we're just gonna push him back in and close the skull." You're like,
"Yeah,
what the hell, man!" But it was. I give them credit because they took something like that and gave it a very creative twist to it, which I definitely appreciate. That instead of having it, like maybe walk around or attached to the leg or attached to the stomach, basically attached to the back of her head.
Yeah, I think when you see Gabriel in action, I think Joe mentioned that, I believe, when they had Gabriel walk backwards, and not only that, it's all the hand movements were backwards. I think I love that because once you mentioned JR, the reveal with poking the skull and the hands come out, that's when I knew, okay, I know what I'm in for. I'm more forgiving now because the movie's not taking itself seriously. The movie's just trying to give you something to just go, either you laugh at it, you're scared of it, or you're really criticizing and you're angry, but you're getting an emotion, which a lot of movies these days don't really give you. Everything's cut and paste right now. But going back to this action, like I mentioned, a lot of parkour. He had like kind of superhuman strength. He was a kung fu master. He chopping up everybody into pieces and in that police station. JR, like when you saw that action, like did that take you out of the film, or did it make you open up your eyes and make you say to yourself, wow, this is something different? Like, how did you see that?
I'll be honest, it kind of took me away from the film a little bit because I just felt like it was a little bit over the top, going through a whole police precinct where instead of, just like escaping and going where you need to go, eventually, they were going to go to the hospital to see his mother. But for me, it kind of disconnected me to like the one scene that I think was the most beautiful done scene as far as like every cinematic was when Gabriel goes after Madison in the house, and you get this drone like image of her running through her whole house. And the first time I seen that, I was like, oh my God, it's like she's running it's like a mouse running in a maze. And when I seen that, I was like, I've never seen that before. I thought that was so beautifully done. And out of all the action scenes in the movie, that one was the one that stood out to me the most. I just thought I knew he was going to escape, but it kind of went a little too crazy for me, where I think they could have cut back a little bit on that and just, they could have rushed the scene. Just, all right, escape, bam. Walk out the door, turn into Madison, get to the hospital, turn into Gabriel. I would have been fine with that.
Joe, what's up? What you think?
Just to piggyback on that scene, your comment, that too was one of my favorite scenes of the movie. It actually gave me, it was dizzying. It was, like you said, it felt like, and again, without just saying the fact that she again runs upstairs. I started at first, but as the scene kept on going, I was feeling dizzy. I was feeling claustrophobic.
Yeah.
I was feeling that there was a lot for that. That scene was revealing a lot of what's going on with her. As far as, from first of all, they realize that Maddie's kind of dangerous. And then they put her in a jail cell with a whole bunch of women. The way the women were dressed kind of threw me off a little bit. Like, what am I watching here? Is this taking place in the 70s and the 80s? Just the way that the women were coming after her, it just was a bit much for me.
This film was a love letter to, in my opinion, to old 70s Italian horror films as well.
It did get a comparison to a Gallo film, actually.
Yes.
It did get a comparison on that. But yeah, so then, the gore was so over the top in the jail and everything that, she was doing. And then for me, that would have been enough, like you said, Jari. She gets out, Gabriel gets out. I keep saying she because we, obviously it's still Maddie, but it's Gabriel. But, Gabriel gets out of the jail cell and just goes. And then you go into the whole police scene. And then I'm like, am I watching The Matrix? Is this, that's one of the, it took me out. I actually found myself on my phone, even though it was all action, just because of, I knew it was, it was going to be so much that I probably didn't have to really pay a lot of attention at this part. So I started looking at my phones for some information on the movie. That's never good if you don't even stop the movie. And in an action scene out of all things, because it just, I didn't feel it fit the movie. You could have taken all that out. Maybe had a quick confrontation with the two cops, to lead into the rest of the movie. But yeah, the over the top, taking out the police force. I'm like, this isn't a horror movie now. This feels more action movie, and that's that. Like you said, that was one of the moments I was taken out of the movie because I was actually looking at my phone at that point. Most especially Regina Moss. I swear that I just kept seeing Wanda Sykes. My eyes could not stop seeing Wanda Sykes. So when the actress delivered her lines, the jokes fell flat because it just, and that's
you gotta appreciate when Gabriel flicked the chair at them, though.
I did. Well, that's because wait,
they're not likable, so you still get hit. You're like,
but she got behind him. And chooses to have a weaponry instead of her gun and just be done with it. She wants to fight him. And honestly, when he didn't kill her, I went, damn it. I was hoping, just go ahead and kill her. I'll be fine with the other one, but he slices her. Yeah, when he took the chair and knocked him out. But that, it was, like I said, for me, it was just that. As soon as she walked in, my eyes could not stop seeing Wanda Sykes. And then her lines, which were meant to deliver some levity into it, just fell flat because, and it's maybe casting.
So, JR, what you feeling?
Well, to quickly jump off of that before I get into my point, I felt like I was watching Wanda Sykes and a young Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm like,
I
all
didn't
right,
want to jump on this.
this is
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves' like subtle conversation
I,
and
I,
weird
I,
looks.
I won't
Here's Wanda
lie.
Sykes, like,
I won't lie. I thought the Keanu Reeves cop character, I thought he got killed earlier on in the film, and he came back later. I'm like, what the hell? So go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
yeah. And one scene with him that drove me crazy when he jumped off the fire escape and landed on the garbage, and then he still catches up to Gabriel.
Oh, that was yeah.
Oh my God. But for me, this is the problem I have with the movie is one, there were no scare scenes. Majority of scenes were like, I've seen this before. And it literally took the movie 56 minutes to really get going. I timed it. I'm sitting there like watching the movie. You know, it was like I'm here and there with it, my attention span, keeping track of it. But then once it started going into like the direction meant to go to, it was like literally 56 minutes later. And I'm sitting here wondering what could you have done with all this time to make this movie better. But for me, it did feel like a B movie. There were no real scare scenes in this. I mean, even if it was they tried to attempt a scare scene, there was nothing scary in this movie. I mean, it was definitely for our rating, even though take away the scenes in the jail, it didn't give you that R rating scary type feel. It was more like, all right, just get to the movie. We have the plot line. Let's work the plot line, get to the twist, and then we'll go from there. So for me, I mean, I didn't not once did I jump in this film. I mean, I was a little creeped out when you see the Gabriel character in the hands because that is still freaky as hell. But it didn't scare me to the point where like I turned away. I mean, I kind of wanted more scary scenes, and this is an unfortunate part about being a James Wan film, being compared to like you're saying, The Conjuring and all that. You have these expectations already put in place once you hear James Wan. Once you hear he did The Conjuring, and there was just no single scary scene for me.
I think that's why I love this movie so much, is the fact that he didn't make another Insidious or Conjuring or Saw or anything like, related to that, because if you see another paranormal film or a film that's about mental health or it's going to be another creature feature, we've seen that before. Now, this movie's not meant to be scary. And again, I go back to it's the studio's fault because they did not know how to market this film. This film was obviously they knew what it was, and they didn't know how to market that to an audience. So they went and marketed it as James Wan, and they got all his film titles attached to it. So you're going and expecting that. And I agree, it took a long time to get started. But I if you go back now that if you go back and watch it again, there's a lot of stuff like the very opening in the opening credits. If you look closely, it tells you that Madison has a twin that's a parasitic twin. It's right there in the credits. The twist is given to you right up front if you're really paying attention to it. And then you mentioned that her name is Emily, and that's what Gabriel always called her that. But at the end of the film, he called her Madison. And that's Gabriel giving the control back to the Madison character. So there's a lot of little things in here to pick up on. So it's not a scary film at all. I think this film, I had a lot of fun with it. And that's one thing I haven't had in a long time with films. I don't have a lot of fun anymore. This one brought the fun back. So you guys both are giving really valid points on the fact that why you didn't enjoy it as much as I did, which is great because I knew going in it's going to be a very polarizing film. And I give the filmmakers credit for at least trying and attempting something a bit out of the box.
For the entertainment value, I did like the movie. So don't get me wrong. The negative stuff is just brought, as you said, the marketing part. This was not the best James Wan horror movie because it wasn't a horror movie. I would have put this as a thriller. Maybe action.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like a thriller action type of movie. The only thing, again, I don't recall at any point them saying how Gabriel can affect electricity. So the movie, that was another thing is like he was able to control the electricity, manipulate it somehow, and it didn't explain to you why. Other than that, like I said, entertainment value, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. If I didn't go into it expecting a horror movie, I would appreciate it the way you're appreciating it, because I would have taken out of my brain, I'm watching a movie and it's not a horror movie. So I mean, overall, I would give it a 3.5.
JR?
And for me, I agree. I mean, it took a while for it to really get going, and I think that for me that took a hit on the rating for me. Creative wise, I give it to them. Like they said something amazing with a parasitic twin that I've never seen before, besides baskets. But this one they took it, I mean, a little bit on another level. But for me, so it is an enjoyable movie. Don't go in it with high expectations. Just go in it to enjoy it. I give it a 3.5.
I'm gonna give it a 4. I loved it. I thought it was so different, especially compared to stuff now. You mentioned Basket Case. This is Basket Case on steroids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would give it a 4. And I mean, a lot of your points are valid, so I'm not disputing any of that. But I tend to appreciate the fact that they went and tried something different. And with that being said, thank you for joining us on 3 Corners of Horror, Malignant. Very polarizing film, but that's why we love film, because it's something that's not going to appeal for everyone. But we could always, give us our thoughts about it, and hopefully it'll make you think about it. Now, JR, tell us what's next on Horror Fiend TV.
Again, that is the season of Halloween. We're going to go visit Haddonfield, the stomping grounds of the movie icon, the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Myers. What does the new Halloween Kills have in common with Halloween 3? Let us know. This is JR. Click the button. I don't trust this girl. Peace.
And with that being said, this is Horror Fiend TV, 3 Corners of Horror. I'm Rick. That's Joe. That's JR. Thank you for joining us. Come back for next week. Like JR said, we got Halloween, the best of the best. What can we say? We love you. Thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe.
See you next week.